Welcome back. This time I would like to address the issue of the drone incursions in Poland. I believe they are a bait and that Europe has beaten it. Let's go in detail. During the night of September 9, 19 Russian drones entered Polish territory, and it's not the first time this happens. In December 2023 and March 2024, Russian missiles also entered Polish airspace. So the question is whether these could be accidents, especially the latest one, or not. And the answer is unlikely. Instead, we are wondering whether Poland should invoke Article 4 of NATO or not, which has only a symbolic value. So let's focus on more substantial issues. Number one, if Putin used this incident to push Europeans to a more defensive position, he succeeded. Now even Poland is considering reducing aid to Ukraine on the false premise that they may need that hardware, interceptors, Patriots, drones, and artillery for their own defense. Does this make any sense? Of course not. Any Russian unit stuck in Ukraine means one less unit available to attack, let's say, Poland. If Putin really wanted to attack Poland militarily, of course, and it's in Ukraine, the real scenario where the real war is taking place, not in Poland, a possible scenario that is actually very unlikely. So it makes no sense to divert supplies destined to Ukraine at the risk of Ukraine losing crops as a result, which would precisely liberate units if Putin had really the intention of attacking Poland militarily, most likely Estonia or Moldova, which is unlikely, but more likely that an attack on Poland. Number two, what is really likely is that Putin is going to continue his hybrid war and that this against Europe, and that this episode in Poland is part of that hybrid war, but not in the form of terrorist attacks, but in the form of disinformation, since the gains recently made by the AfD in Germany, National Rally in France, and Reform UK in England represent a much better opening for Putin to weaken Europe by getting the far right elected in the three largest powers in Europe. If you were Putin, would you be so stupid to launch at this moment a military attack against a NATO member like Poland and weaken the political position of the three parties you have sponsored for years, just when they are making unprecedented gains in the polls and recent elections? Of course not. Moreover, we know that Putin's economy is weakening, different from past speculations about the woes of the Russian economy. This time, the Russian central bank has had to cut interest rates for a second time. Unfortunately, instead of using this in their favor, Europeans are still hesitating. Making progress, but such a slow rhythm that the final outcome may not be very different. Serious scholars like Jack Watling and Alexander Gabweb have estimated that if the war doesn't end in 1 to 2 years, Putin would be forced to inflict painful adjustments on Russians from the cities, different from the poorest Russians who have suffered as cannon fodder in Putin's army, which could destabilize his regime. Putin is throwing the kitchen sink apocalypse now for a reason, because in a year that may be out of his means. And what are we doing to push the Russian economy over the edge? Nothing. We are, on the contrary, demanding a ceasefire, a premature ceasefire that would give Putin the chance to recover, to regenerate its losses, to, as estimated, become again a threat in 7 years. Even Trump challenges Europe to stop buying oil, gas, and metals from Russia in order to get an excuse to not impose sanctions, the sanctions he promised on his friend Putin. And unfortunately, Europe is playing along because of their unwillingness to make this sacrifice. And how could they dare to take that step if they had not bothered to explain the war to their voters? Because they are England, Germany, and France are in a very difficult fiscal position. But turning to gradualism is not the solution. The solution consists in explaining the war to their voters, as Michael Kimmage said, to sell the war to the voters, which is we should not repeat 1938. So by doing this, Europe is biting the bait, rushing to peace, even though this is the time that suits Putin the best. Yet, as mentioned before, you might say that Germany, France, and the United Kingdom are going through difficult fiscal times, and that's correct. However, in 1938, Neville Chamberlain also wanted to spare Europe from the cost in life and treasury of a war that a war may cause. And all he got was a costlier war in 1939. So appeasement is not an option. Gradualism is not an option when you deal with somebody like Putin. The key of the question is how, when your own hesitation has put you in a bad spot, like in the cases of Starmer and Macron, on public finances, when your main ally buys into the enemy's narrative, and I am specifically talking about Trump with respect to Putin, even in this Polish incident, he is repeating the Putin's line that this was just another accident. So how you sell the war, the Ukraine war to voters when the far right is waiting at the other side of the fence? Well, you do that like Churchill and FDR in 1938, in the case of FDR, already in 39. You explain to voters what the alternative is, how in 1938 others like Chamberlain also proposed to close their eyes to reality, only to be awakened rudely by reality itself. And yes, voters still might not be willing to make the sacrifices demanded by history, which involve adapting to the new kind of war brought by drones, which implies spending, which implies other sacrifices in government spending. But it's much better to fall that way than to fall ridiculously with that little dance where you try to kick the can down the road and hope that the problem, Putin and the far right, will just go away by itself. And having said that, thank you.
And now, an important message from the Democratic Party. It's going to hurt every American. It's going to hurt the kids at the universities who've had nothing to do with protesting, but it's also going to hurt the kind of medical research and other kinds of great research that is done at Harvard and other universities. So we sent him a very strong letter just the other day, asking 8 very strong questions about why this isn't just a pretext.
Well, you'll let us know if you get a response to that letter. I do want to say, you said you hope that
I will.
This